there's so many connections between this story, well, all of Joseph's life in Yeshua, that I would not be surprised to see a connection between every single element in like Genesis 30 something to the end of the book.
Yeah.
The silver cup, this is Yeshua saying, let this cup pass from before me, and can you drink from the same cup I'm drinking from? And Paul saying, don't drink of the cup unworthily. All of that stuff. Exactly how it connects to divination, I don't really know.
What it doesn't say is that Joseph says, I practice divination.
Yeah, he said, don't you know that I
he's
do
saying,
this? Like,
he's essentially saying, it's my cup and this is what I'm capable of.
He was also able to interpret dreams, so could it be a relate with that?
Well, he said when he interpreted the dreams, he was very clear that God interpreted the dreams. But I think with the divination, I think it's just like Jay said, they expected
it's
him.
It's an Egyptian culture.
It was a cultural thing.
He used it to his advantage that that's what they thought.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't think he actually, clearly that's not in Joseph's character to do something like that. I think it's more a matter of, it was a tool that he used because it was culturally...
Yeah, because he didn't have the cup when he interpreted the dreams.
It was respected as his possession. It was
is part of his position.
Right. And it was expected of him, but it wasn't didn't mean he did it. Yeah.
There's the gifts that Jacob sends, myrrh being among them. The gum, that's frankincense probably.
Mm-hmm.
So frankincense and myrrh
and gifts that Christ received.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Magi coming from the east. They're coming from the east into Egypt, bringing gifts to the Savior. They don't recognize him. They don't know who he is.
Yeah, they keep calling him the man.
Yeah, and Joseph weeps over them when they don't know who he is. Yeah. Just like Yeshua weeps over Jerusalem because they don't recognize him. Joseph is over the top generous with them, gives them all kinds of stuff, gives them sacks full of grain, which is bread of life.
Yep.
And then he puts their money back in the sacks, silver money, so it's money of redemption. This could be pointing to the fact that Yeshua gives us, he is the bread of life, he gives us life, and we can't buy it. There's nothing we can do to buy it.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He washes their feet. I mean, he doesn't personally do it, but he has his servants do it.
Mm-hmm.
Washes their feet, feeds their donkeys, takes care of them. Yeshua washes his disciples' feet. He feeds the flocks that the Pharisees and the other religious leaders are supposed to be feeding but aren't. He is patient and generous with everybody. He befriends the people that are rejected by everybody else. In Egypt, that would be Hebrews.
Yeah, because they were an abomination.
He eats with them when all of the other Egyptians wouldn't, just like Yeshua with all the rejected of Israel. Which is, that whole thing is kind of ironic. Like the Egyptians won't eat with the Hebrews because they're disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Hebrews later, they won't eat with anybody else because they're all disgusting. Mm-hmm. Like, you guys learn anything? But people are all the same.
It's the same from time immemorial.
Well, think about this drought too, because what he stored up is grains. And you're talking about the bread, and here we are in a famine of bread and truth in our own culture, and but yet they still had choice fruits and apricots and almonds and and nuts, and they had flocks of sheep. So were they really starving?
We look at our world and we're like, oh, I can go carnivore and I can go, and we can be sustained on all these different types of foods. But I think that really goes back to the way that cultures lived then. It was like bread was a staple, and it is still in our culture now. But it's like, if we didn't have all the things, think about the way we live now. It's like, you go traveling to a very, very small town, and Brenham is close, but you don't have all the things. and I really think it's more like that sort of thing where it's like there certainly is a lot of restriction in what's being produced and stuff, but there's less of probably everything, but it's also accessibility and the fact that there's not broadly an abundance.
Well, and those are all storable things, and then you just think about with the animals, it's like their forages. They don't know how long this is going to go on, so they're not going to start killing their herds in a drought. Yep. Number one, they're not fat enough.
I was going to say they're too lean.
Number two, you don't know, like you're just trying to keep them from dying. I would assume, like making sure they're sustained, but not like.
Not wiping out your herd.
Well, I imagine too, they may have had to like cull at some level just to sustain on what was, if there was a drought. It's like you're not going to have as much grass, right? I mean,
right, the forage is going to be limited, and you're just uncertain.
Most droughts aren't, or most famines even aren't total famines where there's nothing.
Right.
It's just very limited. And what makes it worse is your local government who gets in the way and people who raise
taxing and rationing.
Well, I think that's why it says severe drought. It's letting us know that whatever came was heavy. It was affecting multiple people around.
And even then, Jacob
for
was
one,
wealthy
they had to travel a long way to Egypt just to get food.
But he still has luxury items.
He still he sent food, pistachios, almonds.
It reminds me of Revelation, where a bag of gold will buy a loaf of bread, but don't touch the oil and the wine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that those are two different passages in Revelation, but it seems to be painting the similar kind of picture where there's a famine of the essentials, but we have an abundance of luxury items. I probably told you this before, but one of my Russian teachers was a survivor of the siege of Leningrad, and she had some horror stories, and you could see it in her face that she still had that million-mile stare, like 40 years later, whatever it was. But she and her brother, and we were talking about, in class, we were talking about Glasnost, because this was, Gorbachev was the new president, and Russia was just starting to open up, and we were wondering whether we were still going to have a job. But we were talking to her about this, and she was very pessimistic. Nothing's going to change. It's just, Russia is Russia. It always will be. And somebody says, but now you've even got blue jeans in Leningrad. She says, you can't eat blue jeans. That's true.
It's not very helpful.
But that is interesting because I think like we really are in like spiritually in poverty, but nobody knows it because we have all the luxuries. Mm-hmm. We got all the comfort. We have all the things that make us
and distractions.
Until they're all taken away.
Yes. Well, and it's interesting because that's essentially like Jay kind of says this almost begrudgingly when he talks about Joseph, how Joseph like taxed them all, took all the grain and then like taxed them again. Like they had to give more and more, right? Until they had nothing of their own, until they were completely in servitude. And I think this is like the picture of like how we are. We're slaves to God. And we're like, that's how we're supposed to be. Like we're supposed to be his servants and let him feed us. Mm-hmm. But Jay's looking at this and he's like, yeah, this is like, total socialism, communism.
Yeah, but the difference is, I think too, is like Joseph was doing that with foresight.
Correct.
To save them from themselves
and care.
They weren't gonna store up for themselves because they didn't have the insight that God had given them.
Yeah. Is that wrong?
It's prophetic.
It's prophetic, and it's also, but it might be wrong when the governments do it to us.
Yeah, because they're doing it for their own gain.
They are.
Yeah.
But is it wrong when Joseph does it?
No.
Even though he's the right hand man of the guy.
I'm sure they all thought he was wrong.
So this makes me question.
During the 7 years of famine, the Egyptians would be having disdain for Joseph because he's the one charging them,
Mm-hmm.
And then the Hebrews now come in, and then later on they're given the best land in Egypt, the Goshen. And the Egyptians then start to resent the Hebrews mainly because of Joseph at that time. And now 400 years later, they're enslaved.
Well,
Yeah, but the
Bradford,
It's the
anti-Semitism.
beginning of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the
Bradford had
same reason
mentioned
for it now.
that Pharaoh was probably a Semite.
Yeah. That was
Possible.
even prepared.
The Hyksos or whatever they were called.
Yeah.
That he was possibly a Semite, and so there was resentment from that whole era.
Because
of
they
the
came in and overtook
Native Egyptians, that they're like, okay,
and that prepared the way for
this
this
imposter.
Pharaoh to elevate Joseph.
Interesting.
I don't know.
And then they're given the best land, and that kingdom that came in and took over Egypt actually built you said it was like they're in Goshen built like a fortress to protect themselves. Like 240,000 men could be there, and then that's the land that they're given.
But you could
Wow.
see how that would set up like this whole next 400 years of slavery, because that Pharaoh gave Joseph favor and the Israelites
And they
favor,
only ruled
but
for
then
a little
once
over
they had
100 years.
the
So
opportunity,
then, then those pharaohs forget what Joseph did,
Right.
and
and
They
they're
don't
done
care.
with those Hebrews.
They're like, what have you done for me?
yeah.
Nothing.
But I think
Yeah.
what's happening in our nation, in Australia, in pretty much everywhere that you have,
Nigeria.
is that these people are being targeted in a way that no other group are being targeted.
Well,
And-
now it's Christians and Jews being targeted. It's like, we've had these shootings.
Well,
at
because
Christian schools.
because Christians
We've had
support Israel.
Yep.
cars driving down Christmas parades. No, they're targeting Christians, and then they're targeting Jews and stuff. But no,
And I think about like when you're talking about that, like the whole Israel thing, like I've thought a lot about this, like that whole thing, and how we can't tease that apart, and it's not for us to judge, and we're gonna have to like watch it play out. But even this story of Joseph makes me wonder, like here we have like Egypt, and Joseph becomes the right hand man of the king of Egypt, and he's saving Israel from within, like and
In a wicked system.
in a system that God is like, I'm sure not happy with, but God is using it. And so it's like we have this situation with Israel, the state, and everybody knows that the state of Israel as a government is not perfect. It's far from perfect. As a matter of fact, there's some really wicked stuff, but again, here he is, and these people keep returning to the land. Like prophecies are being fulfilled, whether we like that it happened from the UN or not, like, because everybody's got their opinion about all that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, like one of the things I think is like, is this part of this story? Is this prophetic? Will we see the right hand man of a guy who's leading, who doesn't seem righteous? I think about the beast and like when we think about the Antichrist, we have one then the other, and I'm thinking like here we have more of like the Christ, the image of Christ, the pattern of Christ, but we have this guy who's in power, and then his right hand man, and he's righteous, so he's actually carrying out God's prophecy, like carrying out the wisdom and the care of the people based on God's prophecy, and using wisdom from God to do this. And I'm like, how will we know? This kind of shows us what that could look like. And like I said, like Jay can look at this and be like, oh yeah, he's like putting all these people into servitude. This is definitely not a good thing in general of how it should be. But how are we going to discern that kind of stuff? What if the prophecies about the, what do you call it? The beast and the prophet of the beast, right?
The beast and the false prophet.
And the false prophet. It's like, what if it looks very similar to this? Like,
I
how
think it
are we
will.
going to know?
I think it's all going to
What are going to be the ways that we know? And could that be part of what we're going to end up seeing in Israel? Like, I'm just like thinking about this out loud right now, just because I'm thinking it's very complex. And I want to boil it down to something really simple. to be honest. That's how I want to do that. So the thing I think about is always like, we need to be watching and prayerfully.
I think the Holy
discerning.
Spirit is just gonna carry us through it, and then we're gonna look back and go, oh.
Well, I think some of that's being revealed right here, like when Joseph, until he is given this power of authority, then he remembers the dream. And because he's through all this time, he's been in prison, but he's been steadfast, you know. And now I forgot where it was at. We didn't read it today, but before this, it was like Joseph remembered his dream that his brothers would come and kneel before him. Remember? And he like.
Now that it's happening,
revealed
that
to
that
God
you're like,
his
oh
purpose.
wow, yeah,
So it's
my
like the
vision
Holy
has come
Spirit
true.
revealing to him.
Like, this is what this was for.
Yeah.